Welcome into the Diamond Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com. I am Ben McKee, and I am joined on this Friday, July 11th edition of the podcast by former Tennessee pitcher Will Heflin. Have a ton to discuss here on the podcast. This podcast is going to serve as our 2025 MLB Draft Preview, which begins this Sunday. It's a two-day event this year. Normally, it's been 3 days. Normally, it's been rounds 1 and 2 on day one. And then rounds 3 through 5.
3 through 10.
3 through 10, that's right. And I think there was even a time where they did on day one just the round 1 and compensatory picks and didn't even do round 2. And then they did 2 through 10 on day 2. That's why I confused myself there for a moment. And then they would do the last 10 rounds on day 3. But this year, that they are packing it in tight like a can of sardines. You've got the first 3 rounds on Sunday night beginning at 6 o'clock. I have not looked up the exact broadcast details. I believe it's on ESPN and the MLB Network. And Tony Vitello will be featured on the MLB Network coverage, as he has been the last couple of years. Tony obviously does a great job and would have a successful career in broadcasting if he ever got tired of coaching. So he'll do a tremendous job once again this year, although it will be funny to see him nervous this year because for the first time in the Tony Vitello era, I think the draft is going to hit Tennessee as hard as we've seen them be hit. They've had a couple of guys that were real stingers at the time, but it was like one guy per draft. This draft has the potential to I don't think it'll hurt them per se, or kill them or anything like that. I think there's enough depth on the roster to where they'll be fine. But you're certainly going to be set up to get to Omaha better if you have a successful draft and the dominoes fall your way. So Tony's going to be nervous up there on the set this year, which he joked about with John and Vince earlier this week. It's simply the most important draft of the Tony Vitello era. And not only is it the most important, there's the most names attached to it, and that kind of goes hand in hand. That's why it is the most important, because there are so many guys that could sign and not make it to campus. So we will get into that in the second segment of this podcast. In the first segment, we're going to discuss yet another transfer commitment for the Vols, and that is Finley Bates, a middle infielder from San Diego State. Tony Vitello had some comments to John and Vince earlier this week on 99.1 The Sports Animal that lit the college baseball world on fire. So we'll share our reaction to those comments as well. But first, Mr. Heflin, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing well, sir. Happy Friday, July 11th. It's kind of been a fast week for me. Like, just flown by. I'm not real sure why. Don't have a ton going on, so kind of at a loss for words, which is weird at the beginning of a podcast. So I will leave it at I'm doing well, Mr. Ben. Sorry, I don't have anything more fun to share, but I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well, sir.
That is A-okay. I am glad that you are doing well. I also am doing well. Tennessee continues to do well in the transfer portal, picked up its 12th commitment from the portal on Thursday in Finley Bates, the middle infielder from San Diego State. He was on campus earlier this week for a visit, I believe a Monday visit, and then he announces that he has committed on Thursday afternoon. And this isn't, in terms of prospects, this isn't Gavin Keelan. This isn't Maui Ahuna or any other transfer infielders Tennessee has picked up in the past. Andrew Fisher. It's not somebody who's going to, at least here in July, we're not going to assume that Finley Bates is going to just completely change the trajectory of Tennessee's season like we thought Gavin Keelan had the ability, and Andrew Fisher and so on and so forth. But Will, I do think it's a really important addition because you did need another transfer infielder and middle infielder, I think, to be more exact. And Finley Bates has been a productive college baseball player at San Diego State. 2 years ago, he was the Mountain West Freshman of the Year. That was the season that Tennessee won the national championship in 2024. He hit 292, 3 home runs, 14 doubles in 53 games. And then this past season, he hit 357 games. Only 1 home run, but hit 300, 12 doubles, 23 RBIs. He led the team with 48 runs scored, drew a conference-leading 40 walks. So it's not the player profile that we're accustomed to seeing in terms of the power. And something that we've talked about on the podcast the last couple of months since the season ended is kind of maybe not a need, maybe not even a desire, but a nice cherry on top to have a different profile in your lineup. And that's what Finley Bates is. He gets on base, and he plays the middle infield and has started at both shortstop and second base, and pretty kind of 50-50 in terms of being a shortstop, being a second baseman. 52 career starts at second base, 50 career starts at shortstop the last 2 seasons. He's a career 296 hitter, 4 homers, 26 doubles, and 432 at bats. So an under-the-radar pickup for Tennessee, but I think a sneaky good one because, again, you needed to add another infielder, and you added a true middle infielder who has had a productive college career up until this point.
Yeah, and I said this last time, so sorry for reiterating, but if you didn't hear it, it's important. That San Diego State home ballpark is massive. It's a big field. So may not be the profile, but I would say we'll see a slight uptick in power numbers this year at Tennessee if he's an everyday type player. And again, you get him with Quentin Eberhardt, you just really don't know. You don't know what kind of transformation guys can make. Even in one fall, working with Q and Elander, we've seen guys just take massive jumps. But you're right, from a middle infield perspective and kind of how you're putting together your position groups, you talked about it a lot. They needed one more, right? They've got options there, but kind of an established defensive steady presence is definitely needed. And so that shortstop competition is going to be fun next year. And I do want to mention, like, Ariel didn't transfer, which you kind of got to tip your cap to, because I think a lot of people would have completely understood if he went into the portal and was like, hey, I want to play every day. I don't want to be a defensive replacement. And a lot of split opinions on him and his future. Is like, is he an everyday guy? Is he not? But for him to stay here and want to compete for it, good for him. So, yeah, you add this to the room, and Abernathy, Newstrom, Marin, they'll play a role. But I think you definitely got deeper on your middle infield / left side, depending on what they do with Manny Newstrom. So you can kind of see it start to come together. And the biggest thing for Tony Vitello always has been, and even with the roster crunch, it's not going to change a ton, is competition, and makes everybody better. And so, all those young guys that, including Ariel, I consider him a young guy because he hasn't played every day. They're all fighting for opportunity, and you bring in a veteran presence. He can help lead those guys. He can also push those guys to be better and win a job. So it's all good all around. And we talked about, it was 2 lefties and a middle infielder. We've got a lefty, we got a middle infielder. So we'll talk about it more, but you probably have room for one more arm at least, maybe 2, like you said. So we'll see what they continue to do in the portal. I know they're still active and not trying to not slowing down, especially with the draft coming up. We'll just have to see where it goes. But yeah, this is a nice pickup. I think the Cali style of baseball kind of has a weird persona to it now, is because, like, the game shifted to more power, velocity, but a lot of kids from Cali, and this is just a stereotype that perception that I have, but it's true and it's positive, is like, they are ball players. They're good defensively. They have good hands. They played the game a lot growing up because they have good weather. They tend to just be high baseball IQ. good base runners, good defensively. That's something Tennessee needs, right? They need steadiness defensively. They need guys to make the routine plays in big moments, especially on these SEC environments. Like there were times this year where it was just an uncomfortable feeling, right? When a ball was put in play, it was just like, and this team's just not solid enough defensively. Um, and so, Tennessee's always going to have the horses to be able to hit their way out of it. This year was a little different. They had the horses to do it, just kind of seemingly weren't able to at times. But it's nice to have, the versatility and the athleticism that they're going to have going into this year. And I think he fits. I think he fits into this Tennessee team probably more so than maybe one in the past because it got a lot of speed. The more you think about it. And so, being able to play second, play short, hit for a high average, get on base, like plug and play for me.
A couple of things going off of what you just said. He is from Colorado. I believe there's a Reese Chapman connection there because Reese
Yeah, but he
Chapman.
played in Cali. He's a Cali guy.
He is for sure.
You go played 3. What was he there? 3 years?
2.
2 years? Yeah. Even 2 years at San Diego State. Like, I have this picture in my head of a fall getting out of class. He walks, it's perfect, 75 and sunny, and they just go take ground balls and play until they're blue in the face. It's probably dead wrong. It's probably exactly like it is over here, but just that, I don't know, Cali's a great state to play baseball, and you always have good weather. And San Diego is such a nice area. I can't stand California as a whole, but that's different topic for a different day. San Diego State is a cool place to play, and I was very impressed because that was like my second college series was we played a game at San Diego State and some other places, but it was a tournament, so we had a game there against Seton Hall, and then finished. I think we played a night game against the Aztecs. So yeah, go ahead.
I have not heard whether he is trustworthy defensively or not, but just looking at it from a statistical standpoint, 8 errors as a freshman, 7 this past year as a sophomore. What's your take on that for a young infielder? 8 as a freshman, 7 as a sophomore. Is that a fine number to live with?
When you're playing up the middle, you said 50 some games at both spots.
He played 50. He played 53 as a freshman, 57 as a sophomore, and really he wasn't settled into either position. He was kind of going back and forth, which I think gives him even more of the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. So you're averaging one every 6.5 games. So that's less than one a week when you're playing a 4 or 5 game weekly schedule in college baseball. Like that's really good, and it's a natural surface. So,
and then on the power, reminds me of Gavin Keelan. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Finley Bates is going to hit double-digit home runs. I'm not going to predict that whatsoever. I don't think that you're going to see the power that Gavin Keelan displayed. But something that you and I have both talked about on this podcast is for guys who have for guys who have not hit a lot of home runs, their home run total is small. It makes me feel better when I see the doubles total pretty high. And Finley Bates has hit 26 career doubles. Now, I obviously have not watched him play, so I don't know if those are line drives down either foul line or that they're just line drives that are getting over the head of the shortstop or the second baseman, and they're not, off the wall, kind of like we saw with Gavin Keelan and Hoover, those type of doubles. So I don't really know the profile, but 26 doubles is not nothing, and that makes me feel a little bit better in terms of having more power than the stat sheet would suggest, especially when you take him out of that San Diego State ballpark that you're talking about and how big it is and how hard it is to run the ball out of there, and then putting him in Lindsey Nelson. I'd be surprised if he hits double-digit home runs, but is he going to hit 5? I bet you he does.
Yeah, I would say he could probably get to 10 if he played every day. Little quick research too. This is good podcasting. So we had mentioned last time, or I think you told me this. He was the Mountain West Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year. So that's a nice honor. Kind of tells you that, hey, the numbers were good, but there were some big moments in there. You can't just stat pad your way to a Player of the Year type deal. Like, it has to be a real impact, or at least that's my assumption. And his dad played 4 years in the majors. So that's a good baseball bloodline. Probably has some sort of idea on how to conduct himself, how to handle his business. So I think Tennessee's going to like what they get in Mr. Finley. And real quick, hit 8 homers his senior year of high school. So that's probably 30 to 35 games. I think there's some pop in there. Not going to be at sea level anymore. Ball may fly a little bit. Working with Q, working with Elander. Never. I would probably set the home run line if I had to at 11.5, if that was your sort of thing.
Yeah, it is sometimes, especially when I'm hanging around you. Of course, nothing that we say is betting advice, but no, I really like
college player props are illegal in Tennessee anyway, so definitely not betting advice.
bad news for Brad Bohannon.
Bad
But
news.
I really do like this pickup for Tennessee, and I know we say that about every transfer
Everybody.
addition
Yeah.
that Tennessee makes, but I mean, Tennessee is now 2 seasons removed from winning a national championship, and Josh Elander put out the graphic yesterday. I think it was that no team in college baseball has won 50 games in 5 straight seasons other than Tennessee. So they win a lot, which means they bring in a lot of talent, which means I like a lot of the additions that they make. Not every one of them is going to work out perfectly, but given what they needed, I felt like, and I think we had this discussion at one point, I felt like you needed a safety blanket, a safety net with your infielders, because you have a lot of talent on the infield with the guys you named earlier: Newstrom, Marin, Abernathy, Ariel. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. I don't know. You know the group of names that I'm referencing. Like, that's a lot of talent there, but you're hoping that they take that next step next year and play a big role. That's not a guarantee. And I am somebody who I like to, I'm very much like a coach, and I like to show up to the ballpark every day and know exactly what I'm going to get. And Finley Bates has been a productive college baseball player, and he's going to develop some more and develop into an even better baseball player, working with Ricky Martinez as well as Josh Elander and Quentin Eberhardt. So not only are you getting a good college baseball player, you now have a safety net for if Jay Abernathy does not have the season that you hope, if Manny Marin does not have the season that you hope, if Ariel Antigua just is not able to figure it out in his 3rd year. Now you have Finley Bates, who you will plug in, and he may not be an all-conference player or win this award, that award, but he's going to be productive and give you competitive at-bats and field the baseball. So I like it from that perspective. And I'm really curious. We'll wrap up our Finley Bates conversation on this. I'm really curious to see how they slot the infield, because nothing seems obvious.
No.
Right.
Well, the other thing too is Jay and Newstrom are both
Yeah.
potentially elite outfielders.
Yes.
And
And
so
that's where I
the
was
other
going
thing.
with that is, where do you think – I kind of think they're positioning Jay to play second base. That's my thought. And look, they'll get into fall camp and fall ball, and they'll practice at multiple positions. But DJ Newman, both of the Bowling Green transfers were recruited to play center field. Garrett Wright, the catcher, I think he'll catch. I think Stone Lawless and Levi Clark's development this summer will determine how much Garrett Wright catches. But they believe he can absolutely play center field. So that's one center fielder for you. And then you have the other Bowling Green transfer, who is the two-way player, DJ Newman, who plays center field as well. Now, when he committed, we had the conversation of, well, how realistic is he if he's pitching? Now, I don't think he's going to be starting at Tennessee, so I think it makes it more doable for him to play center and also pitch. That's much different being a relief pitcher and playing a position in the field than being a starting pitcher and playing a position in the field. So you have two center field options in DJ Newman and Garrett Wright. And it seems like they went out and were looking for center fielders, which tells me, I'm curious if you agree with this thought, that makes me think that they're maybe thinking that Jay Abernathy plays second base, or that's the first position he gets a crack at. I'd like to see him in center field, but I think Jay wants to play middle infield from a draft perspective, and that's what he was when he signed with Tennessee, was a middle infielder. I think Manny Marin's your shortstop. I know Ariel's still here. I think Manny higher ceiling at shortstop than Ariel, both at the plate and defensively. So I'm proceeding as if Manny is going to play shortstop. Maybe Jay gets a crack at shortstop. Again, that's what he signed as. But I guess my overall thought is I think Jay will work in center some. I still believe in the outfield in general. But I think his first crack is going to be in the middle infield.
Yeah, the arm strength is so good, but and the speed kind of makes you want to see him running around out there in the outfield. But if his hands are elite and he gets on base at a high level and he's playing middle infield, like that's the highest ceiling both for Jay and for Tennessee. And you've got athletes around him to play elsewhere. So yeah, that would make sense. And Newstrom probably more likely third or right.
I think Newstrom depends on what happens with Manny, what happens with Ariel. If Ariel takes the shortstop position and runs with it, then Manny's probably your third baseman, and Newstrom goes to a corner outfield spot. But if Ariel doesn't take the shortstop position and Manny takes it, then you have a third base opening, and I think Newstrom would be your third baseman in that instance.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it feels almost disrespectful to me. I mean, Newstrom might be the best player out of all the names that have just uttered out of our mouth. Could be, and we're kind of like, center? And we're kind of, yeah, he can fly. He's just as fast as Jay. Maybe a half a step slower. I think Newstrom's speed is like the most best kept secret. Like he can absolutely fly. So it feels almost disrespectful. It's like, oh well, if such and such doesn't win this job, then throw Newstrom there. It's like that's kind of a bad. He's just so versatile. It's hard to make it sound like a compliment, but it is. And I'm just saying his ceiling might be highest of any of them because he's probably got the most natural bat speed and pop in the swing. He can play anywhere. He can run. Again, I like Bates because he kind of fits into the mold of what they have, which is versatility, both offensively and defensively. And I know he's only played the middle infield, but if you can play the middle infield, you can play anywhere. So he's most likely to play second or short if he wins an everyday job. But these guys around him, it's an interesting position group. I don't know that it's looked like this, certainly since I've been on the pod with you and for you since you've been covering it. Really going back to the Ferguson Spence middle infield is kind of the closest comparison we have on that 21 team, where it was like two really, really rock solid defenders, good athletes, and guys that get on base. And those guys hit 1 and 2 in that order for the Omaha team. And I think Ferguson finished at 11 homers and Spence finished with 5. So kind of could see something similar, and people might think, oh, well, that's not, that's certainly not 14 from Keelan and however many Dean ended up with, but you could be just as good overall, if not better, depending on how these guys develop. And I'm not ruling out Antigua. Like it just tells me a lot for him to stay. It really does, and I think he's probably got the most ground to make up out of anybody. But you know how gifted he is with the glove. It's just the consistency and the bat at the plate is hitting, more consistently as well. But again, it's so hard to hit if you don't hit every day, and you kind of see the upside when he did have a good day. And so don't let the height fool you. Ariel's competitive. Manny's really high ceiling. Newstrom really high ceiling, might be the highest. Jay in the same boat as all of them. So add Bates to this group. It's a good looking group, but I think there's a lot of questions going into fall. So you and I are both excited to see some of those fall scrimmages, and I don't think anybody's more excited to start tinkering with it than Tony Vitello.
Fergie had 12. How dare you gyp him of 1 home run?
Fergie hit 12. Yeah, I was forgetting that. What was it? Was it a walk-off against Arkansas? Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, that's the one you are forgetting. And that was my overall point about the infield is everybody's going to be asking, okay, who starts at shortstop? Who starts at second? Who starts at third base? I don't know. I don't even know who starts at first base. Like, does Henry Ford make it to campus? And do they want him to play first base or right field? Does Levi Clark, where's he at defensively after this offseason? Does he need to move to first base? Does Stone Lawless win the catcher's job? Like, there's so many questions that will dictate so many different positions. And at this point, I don't know where they are prioritizing Jay Abernathy in the field. I don't know what they want from Manny. I think if you look back at the middle of SEC play with Tony sliding Manny over to shortstop, I think that may tell you something. But I haven't heard for sure going into his second year. I don't know where Newstrom fits in. I think they like the fact that he can kind of start wherever, whenever. I think that's the best thing that he's got going for him because he is so talented and can play so many different positions. So I don't know. If you were asking me today, what would I do on July 11th? I would have Jay Abernathy in center field. I would have Chris Newstrom at third. I would have Manny Marin at shortstop, and then Ariel Antigua and Finley Bates. They battle it out for second base in the fall. But I don't even like saying that because, okay, well, where's DJ Newman? Where's Garrett Wright? Where's Blaine Brown? Is Blaine Brown a DH or is he playing in the outfield? Is Newstrom in the outfield? Because like we talked about a moment ago, we think he can be great in the outfield as well. So these are good problems to have, and it's the signs of you have talent on your roster, you have a lot of options, and you should be perfectly fine. So, like Will said, I'm looking forward to getting out there for fall practice and seeing where these guys are playing, how they're doing. It's July 11th. The season ended about a month ago, a little over a month ago, and I've already got that itch to get back over there to Lindsey Nelson. And yes, I'm also excited for football season. So don't come at me too hard for that. I can like both at the same time. Leave me alone. Who has not been left alone this week is my Twitter mentions after this Tony Vitello quote came out earlier this week. Tony Vitello, I mentioned earlier, joined John Wilkerson and Vince Ferrara on Sports Talk on 99.1 here in Knoxville. I guess that was Monday. Maybe it was Tuesday. I don't know. I can't remember. But he said
the week has flown by.
Yes, it was July 9th.
That was Tuesday.
That was Wednesday.
That was Wednesday.
Wow. Yeah, the week has flown by. But Tony mentioned there's one school in our league that likes to make undercover offers to guys, and our 2 or 3 guys that were on the end of that have stayed strong. And LSU fans got a hold of that. They did not like that. Started pointing to, well, we just won a national championship as if that has anything to do with it. Ole Miss fans got a hold of that because of the Andrew Fisher and Liam Doyle recruitment. It set social media ablaze, which is pretty impressive that a college baseball coach can do that on July 11th after college baseball season has wrapped up. But there's 2 thoughts that I have here. First one being, I do think he was talking about LSU, and I have not spoken to Tony. Let me put that out there. I have not spoken to Tony about this, but I do think he was talking about LSU. I initially, if I'm putting all my cards on the table, I thought he was initially talking about Georgia. I did not say Georgia in one of my tweets, but I did respond to somebody who thought that they were talking about LSU, and I said I don't think he was talking about LSU. But I believe I was wrong for that tweet because Jay Abernathy, where's he from, Mr. Heflin?
I believe he is from Acworth, Georgia.
The Atlanta area, right?
Yeah. Same hometown as Peter. Durkee.
Shout out Pete Durkee.
VFL.
VFL, baby.
He and Chad Zerker, by the way, our friend of the pod or enemy of the pod. I'm not real sure all the time. But he and Chad are currently about to tee off in a 2v2 best ball like match play tournament that they're doing at their club here in Knoxville. So shout out Pete and Chad. Good luck in your match. If they win today, they play tomorrow. If they play tomorrow and win, they play Saturday. It's a little 3-day deal. You got to win to play the next day. Because I was trying to golf with Pete this weekend, and he was like, I can't. I'm playing with Chad in this deal. And I was like, I don't know that I've ever been more jealous of you than I am right now. But yeah, shout out Pete and Chad. Hope y'all play well today. Or don't. I don't really care. But yeah, Jay is from Georgia. I'm so sorry.
Who's the better golfer?
Oh, I'm better than Pete.
Yeah, I'm not asking about you. I'm asking about between Chad and Pete.
Oh, Pete. Chad.
Really?
Yeah, I think Chad probably had him back in his day. Probably had both of us, but I don't know that he plays as much as he used to.
Kids will do that to you. So props to Peter for still getting out there on the course despite having a little one.
Yeah, that's why I'm better than Pete. No kids versus kids.
Yep. That is right. Where's Levi Clark from?
Oh, I believe he's from Georgia.
And there were rumors about multiple schools in Georgia. It wasn't just the Bulldogs. In fact, it was a different school in the Atlanta area that there were rumors about coming after Jay. And so I initially thought that Tony was talking about Georgia with those comments, but I do think that he was talking about LSU with those comments because it sounds like LSU made a run at Tegan Coons and Levi Clark. So Tony was not too pleased about that. What was – and for all the Ole Miss fans in my mentions, I know that y'all aren't going to believe this, so maybe it's not even worth saying.
Say it anyway.
I cover Tennessee. I'm the Tennessee homer. I can never see it from the other side.
Right.
You know, we're new to baseball. I just started covering the baseball team like 2 years ago. I have no idea.
3 years now. Yeah, 3 years ago.
I'm going on my third year.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the college baseball. The Tennessee baseball program just started when it got cool to start covering them like everybody else.
Yeah.
So I know all that. I know I cover Tennessee, so I'm a Tennessee homer. I'm a Tennessee guy, yada, yada, yada.
I transferred in 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it was cool.
Yep. So I know you're not going to believe this. Tennessee did not reach out to Liam Doyle and Andrew Fisher first. That did not happen. And there were others in my mentions, and I believe they were suggesting the same things along the Liam Doyle and Andrew Fisher line of, like, I had somebody in my mentions. This was a hilarious response. It was that classic, well, my brother's cousin's coworker at Walmart has a stepson that has a cousin who is a twin brother of somebody who plays college baseball that said Tennessee is handing out blank checks and saying, name your price.
Yeah.
I need somebody. Have I just been out of the loop? When did the University of Tennessee start giving blank checks to the baseball program? They took care of Tony Vitello. They took care of Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Tony Vitello was able to take care of his coaching staff after he won a national championship, and they're still not giving out blank checks to players.
Yeah, if they're giving those out, somebody needs to let Tony know because he'll be a lot more happy.
Yes.
Yes. Look.
So, like, I'm curious as to your thoughts on Tony's thoughts as well, but I also wanted to bring that up. Is like Tennessee's not writing checks to anybody and just writing any number like that. That's not a thing. This isn't Tennessee football. This isn't LSU baseball. This isn't like that. That doesn't happen here, and it will not happen here the next couple of years. I don't know why people think that these kids just make so much money on the baseball diamond. Some of them do, and like they're well off. Like they're living good. That like their meals are paid for. Like let's not get it twisted, but like Liam Doyle was not the highest paid transfer in the SEC this year. That was what's the man that went from Florida to Auburn? I'm wanting to say Derek Fisher, but I think that's wrong.
Cade
Fabian.
Fisher?
Cade Fisher. Thank you. I was getting they had 2 Florida transfers, didn't they? Auburn?
Yeah, they had the younger Fabian and Fisher.
Yeah.
He's been there a couple of years, though.
I was combining their names.
Yeah.
He was the highest paid pitcher transfer in the SEC this season, not Liam Doyle. And Auburn paid like 3 times more than Tennessee paid for Liam. So there's a lot of inaccuracies on social media in terms of college baseball NIL. Is it helpful? Is it good? Yes, absolutely. But not every school out here is just throwing money around like it's nothing. And Tennessee certainly is not throwing money around like it's nothing. I promise you that.
Yeah, baseball NIL as a whole is much more vague than football or basketball. You kind of get an idea of what the deals are. It's even hard for you to kind of figure out, what certain guys are getting, and it's just more, I don't know, just more private, and maybe that's not a bad thing. But I will say this about what Tony said, and don't hate me. I don't really have a problem with teams trying to lure guys into the portal. Like that's how it is now. You asked for it. When you open the thing up, you said everybody can get paid. And I think that's a good thing. And I'm glad our coaching staff seemingly has more ethics and doesn't do that. But I'm kind of in the boat. It's like, it's going to happen, right? And so there's no reason for everybody to start pointing fingers at each other. Run your program how you want to run your program and deal with the consequences. Like I'm not gonna, get on my high horse and be like, this is crazy. So whatever school he was talking about, he said one. I doubt they're the only one. So am I glad that we're doing it? Yeah. Would it surprise me and me be like, we should be ashamed of ourselves if we were doing that? No, sorry, I'm not. The college sports is too important, and there's too many people's jobs, and now too much money. Well, I guess always too much money, but now the players are involved. Too much money on the line for you not to do what you need to do to win. And so there's pretty much no rules right now. And so if you can, work, you can't just, a coach isn't calling a guy, right? But they all have agents, they all have buddies, they talk to each other, right?
Travel ball coaches.
Yeah, it was the same way even before. Like if a guy was in the portal, or not in the portal, but he was playing summer ball with a dude, like why couldn't the dude recruit him and make him go into the portal? I get it. It's different when it's two college players talking to each other and, a coach specifically, facilitating something going on. But I'm not going to spin my wheels and have a huge problem with it. Like it is funny to see everybody starting pointing fingers and trying to assume who he's talking about, yada, yada. It's like nobody in the league is perfect. Like I'm sure they've all, broken a rule here or there. But yeah, it is what it is. When you have good players, you're going to have people try to come get your good players. Like that's just how it works.
Andrew Fisher and Liam Doyle maintained all year long that they left Ole Miss because they did not feel like they were in a winning situation. Now, kudos to Ole Miss. They ended up being better than a lot of people thought, including, I think, Andrew and Liam. But from the jump, I talked to Andrew and Liam when they committed to Tennessee. I talked to them in the fall. I did interviews with them during the season. I was the only person in Oxford. I talked to both of them on both occasions, wrote multiple stories, and they maintained from the very jump, not once did they switch up their story, that they felt like they needed to go somewhere else if they wanted to win more and if they wanted to develop more. And Tennessee was not the first to reach out to those two. But again, I'm wasting my breath because Ole Miss fans, we had this conversation last summer when they were throwing out accusations and their writers were throwing out accusations from the jump. Just because your two best players leave, that does not mean that they were tampered with. Maybe they just truly don't want to be there, and that was the situation.
Ben, those two guys visited Florida before they visited Tennessee. Like, that's all you should have said. Been like, Tennessee had them on a visit after they went to Gainesville, so not sure what you're mad about here.
Well, there are some recruitments where a guy knows where he is going to end up, and they take visits elsewhere to make it seem like they did not know where they were going to end up. But you are correct. In the case of Andrew Fisher and Liam Doyle, that did not happen. So, and like I'm more so I found it funny, everything that happened on Wednesday, and I enjoyed.
I love it.
I did too. I enjoyed the like you mentioned, the different fan bases pointing the finger at one another and cussing at each other and getting mad at each other like that. That's good. That's good for the sport. But I also do agree with you that if Tony asked me straight up and was like, "Should I have said that?" I would say no. You're setting yourself up. There's just what do you gain from that? And Tony Vitello did have to serve a suspension because of Maui Ahuna. Now, that was not a money thing. That was an early contact thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's also where there's this misnomer out there that Tennessee baseball just has all this NIL money because of what's the guy that tweeted like Maui was getting $600,000? Who was that guy? I'm blanking on it. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And it made like Burns and everybody mad.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Maui wasn't sniff that.
No, I don't. As long as Tennessee is telling me the truth, Maui didn't get past $50,000. And you have people on Twitter tweeting out about him making $600,000.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think a lot of the misinformation comes from. And I think that sticks in the back of the mind of opposing fan bases. But Tennessee's not out here handing blank checks for baseball players. Now, did some people step up and help Landon Mack? Yes, they did. But did they write a blank check? No. Did people step up and help Rick Barnes land Nate Ament? Absolutely. But they're not writing blank checks in basketball and baseball like they are for David Sanders in football or Nico Iamaleava when he was coming out of high school or Faison Brandon. Like, and I don't know that I don't want to suggest that football is just writing blank checks either and telling kids to name their price. But like we understand the pecking order at Tennessee, and Tennessee baseball is not LSU baseball, so they're not handing out blank checks. So
Tennessee NIL as a whole is not the perception. I think is that it's more than it is. Like Tennessee is further down, like behind some schools that you would be surprised they're behind in terms of NIL. We'll call it capital.
Yeah, Tennessee's been in a really good spot from the jump, but there have been Tennessee did a great job of figuring it out early before everybody else, and now a lot of schools have caught up to them. But Tennessee's still in a really good spot. Like they have not lost anybody due to money with football. If they've lost somebody due to money with football, it's been because they weren't willing to pay what the player wanted, not because they just simply could not afford the player. Now, were they going to give Jonas Adu $1 million for basketball? No. But is that Tennessee not having the money to go spend? Or is that Tennessee not wanting to give that player $1 million? I think it was Tennessee not wanting to give that player who no-showed in the NCAA tournament $1 million. So Tennessee's in a healthy spot. They always have been, but they're not out here writing blank checks. So I don't know. I found it all comedy on Wednesday. That's all. But did want to mention it since those quotes did spread like wildfire and end up on different publications. Before we get out of here, we need to preview the MLB draft and share a couple of MLB draft thoughts because the Vols are going to be heavily involved on Sunday and Monday, and it's going to have a big say in how Tennessee's 2026 season goes, quite frankly. So we will discuss the MLB draft on the other side of this quick timeout. Welcome back into the Diamond Vols podcast on GoVols247.com. I am Ben McKee, and I am joined by Will Heflin, former Tennessee baseball pitcher, on this edition of the podcast. Before we get into our thoughts about Tennessee and the MLB draft this weekend, I do need to encourage you, wherever you find your Go Vols 24/7 podcast, which should be on every single podcast streaming service that is out there. We should be there. So wherever you find us, if you wouldn't mind going in and leaving us a review, that would help us in a major way. And also, if you want to know when we drop these podcasts, right when we drop them, we've had a lot of football podcasts the last couple of weeks because of all the football commitments. Baseball has obviously been very busy. SEC Media Days is this Tuesday. So there's going to be a ton of football podcasts on there as well. Planning on a basketball podcast in the coming weeks as well to gauge our thoughts on how the team is doing this summer, what we're hearing, what they're looking like. Click that notification button up there, whichever service you use, and you'll know right when that podcast drops. But if you wouldn't mind going in and leaving us a review, we would greatly appreciate that. Mr. Heflin, what do you believe is the biggest storyline for Tennessee entering the MLB draft this weekend?
I think it's hard for me to say there's a bigger storyline than the two lefties, Schoolcraft and Appenzeller, at the top. I think seeing what happens with those two guys is probably the biggest storyline. We've went on and on about it, but both of them would be amazing. One would be solid. You get neither of them, you probably feel a little disappointed. And like Joe was telling us, it could go one of all three of those it could be any one of those three outcomes. And so that's probably the biggest storyline because I guess it's the biggest unknown.
Yeah, I would say so. That is my biggest storyline as well, is what happens with the two lefties, because outside of that, I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. There are a couple of transfers. Obviously, I don't mean to suggest that Cruz Schoolcraft and Cameron Appenzeller, like that's the only thing we don't know about is if they're going to make it to campus or not. You could argue
Ford. You could argue Ford.
Yeah, and I was about to say that, like, I feel like the high school pitchers are kind of 1A, and then Ford is kind of 1B. But then you also have a couple of other transfers you're keeping an eye on: Clay Edmondson, Mason Estrada. I found it interesting with Joe Doyle, who we had on our last podcast. Great stuff from him. I've received several messages from multiple people the last couple of days about how they enjoyed that interview. So if you missed it, please go back and check that out. Joe Doyle is a wealth of knowledge. He has a great personality, great dude. Always love having him on. But I found it interesting. He is more confident that Clay Edmondson and Mason Estrada make it to campus than I think Tennessee is. So I found that interesting. But those are other names that we're keeping an eye on. Technically, DJ Newman and Evan Blanco are draft eligible as well. Mark Hindy, the lefty reliever from Duke, he's technically draft eligible. Now, I'd be stunned if he signed in the draft. So there are multiple storylines to follow, but don't you think Schoolcraft and Appenzeller, how would you gauge this? Who would have the bigger impact on Tennessee baseball? Because I think short term, the more important decision is Henry Ford. Long term, the more important decisions are Cruz Schoolcraft and Cameron Appenzeller. So if I told you get Cameron Appenzeller, because my bold prediction is Cameron Appenzeller comes to Tennessee. That's my bold prediction for the draft. If you had me make a bold prediction, that's my bold prediction. Cameron Appenzeller comes to Tennessee. I don't think Cruz Schoolcraft makes it, but there is a chance, just a small one. Henry Ford seems 50-50, maybe 55-45 Tennessee, but it's going to get real tight on draft day. That's why Tony's going to be nervous up there on the draft set, in addition to Appenzeller and Schoolcraft. But we'll say Cruz Schoolcraft goes in the first round, not coming to school. Would you rather have Cameron Appenzeller or Henry Ford? If you had to pick one, which one would you rather have? Because I think in the short term, Henry Ford would have the bigger impact on Tennessee baseball. Like I expect Henry Ford to have a much bigger impact than Cameron Appenzeller next season. But long term, you get Cameron Appenzeller for multiple seasons. You get Henry Ford for one. Which would you rather have of this fun game I'm making up?
Yeah, that's tough. You're asking if we want to play dynasty or redraft fantasy football. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are we going after? I'm going to say Ford because I think what you've done with the young core that you have coming back, plus what you've done in the portal along with Ford, you're going into the season with a national championship ceiling. So give me Ford, take your shot this year. The way that Tennessee recruits, it's not like, and I know no disrespect to Appenzeller. I've never seen him throw. I'm sure he's a great talent. Tennessee's recruiting great talent every year. Their next two classes are in the top 3 as well. And I'm sure when the year after that forms, it'll be in the top 3. And the year after that, like it's Tennessee, Texas, LSU in the top 3, jumbled and kind of ordered different ways depending on the next few years. The next 3 classes, it's pretty much those guys and Arkansas can round out. You know, I think they're mixed in there 2 or 3, and some of them. Tennessee is recruiting at a very high level consistently. So I'm not saying you can just replace Appenzeller, but I'm saying you're going to get other guys too. So that's why I would go with Henry Ford. I think he, really, really helps this team have national championship, not just caliber, because they'll have that with or without him, but he's a big piece. He's a good player.
He could be the difference in you winning or losing the national championship.
Yeah, nothing happens in a vacuum, so you'll never know if he shows up. You could win the national championship. If he doesn't, you could still win it or not, and then you would never know. Like you just will never know. So,
but I do think he is that big of a impact player that he could be the difference in Tennessee getting to Omaha. He could be the difference in Tennessee getting to the championship series finals. I really do believe that, and I just I fall back on my personality that I was talking about earlier. Give me the more sure thing, and I think in college, Henry Ford's the more sure thing. So if you had to pick, I would take Henry Ford on this year's team as well, especially because you've made some big time additions. Now, before Landon Mack committed, before Evan Blanco committed, I would have said Schoolcraft and Appenzeller all day long because that's what the team needed is pitching, and technically they still need left-handed pitching, but I think now that you have shored up your starting rotation, then I think I would rather have Henry Ford. But the good news is you don't have to make that decision. In a perfect world, you get 2 of the 3 this weekend. So we'll see. I continue to hear good things about Appenzeller. Again, not a done deal whatsoever. But I can. Tennessee's still feeling good about Cameron Appenzeller, as good as you can feel about a top 2 round pitching prospect from the left side out of high school. So that I'm with you. I guess those would be the 1A and 1B storylines to pay attention to on Sunday night is what happens with Cruz Schoolcraft and Cameron Appenzeller, the pair of high school lefties, and then what's Henry Ford doing. And then I think that those are kind of your big storylines to pay attention to on Sunday night. I guess you could technically throw in Trent Grindlinger in there as well, the catcher from California who committed in May. He flipped from Mississippi State to Tennessee after the coaching change. Perfect Game has him ranked as the number 30 overall prospect in the country. To me, he is this year's Levi Clark. I mentioned that on the podcast when he committed back in May. He has that type of bat and is ranked as high as Levi was, and kind of the thought of where he could go in the draft is the same. He communicated to me when he committed that he's going to have a high number, very content on coming to school, happy to come to school, kind of wants to come to school. It's going to take a team really meeting his number, if not blowing his number out of the water. So he is certainly a draft risk. Don't get it twisted, but I do think that there's a good chance that he makes it to campus, much like Levi Clark last season. So he is somebody else to pay attention to on Sunday night, Mr. Heflin, since they are doing the top 3 rounds. I think if you see Grindlinger make it through the 3 rounds, then you're probably good. It would take somebody in the 4th or the 5th to come up and really overpay for what that pick is valued at to get Grindlinger. So, and that's something else to remember is like you heard Joe Doyle talk about, okay, Henry Ford, Tennessee's kind of looking at like the top 75 for him. If you get out of the top 75, you're feeling really good. But that doesn't mean you're totally out of the waters, because somebody could come up at 100 with the 100th pick and say, no, we'll give you the number that you want. We'll give you $100,000 more than you initially wanted. And okay, now Henry Ford's off the board. Again, it's not where they're drafted. It's does a team give them the money that they're looking for? But there's also a bunch of things that go off of that as well, because kids will go in. You hear coaches talk about this all the time. Tony talked about this on his interview with John Wilkerson earlier this week. A kid will go into the draft with, I want $1 million. And then somebody says, we'll give you $800,000. All right, where do I sign? And they get in the moment, and it's like, okay, that $800,000 sounds really good. And they take either less than what they said they were going to take, or there's kids who sign for something that they should not sign whatsoever. And those are usually high school guys at the back end of the draft that are probably just get enamored with being a draft pick and want to go play pro ball. And so they're just signing for whatever and kind of get caught up in the moment. There's older guys who sign for less than they should just for the sake of signing. So just because you get out of the approximate range in which you think somebody's going to be drafted on their skill doesn't mean you're out of the water in terms of them still signing in the draft, because a team could always come back and give them the money that they want in later rounds. I always think back to Jared Dickey, where what was Dickey? He was like projected as like we thought he was going 5th, 7th round, if not a little sooner than that. And he ends up going what? Do you remember which round?
It's like the first pick of the 11th, I think.
Yeah, it was 11th, 12th.
But got his money.
Yes, and that's what I always that's the example.
That's how Rucker was too. We thought he was like at 3rd or 4th, ends up going in the 7th, and made 3rd, 4th round money.
Yes, and Jared was the 11th round. He was. What's that?
I said, look at me.
He had to make up for getting that Max hit 12 home runs and not 11 home runs. So I'm proud of you. But Jared got the money that he wanted in the 11th round. The Royals, who he was drafted by before he got traded to the A's, the Royals gave him the money that he was what he was wanting. But he was very much on the verge of coming back to Tennessee. Jared Dickey was for another season. I was communicating with him throughout that process, and he was talking like he was coming back to Tennessee, and then out of nowhere, because somebody, I don't remember who, somebody promised him that they were going to take him in the 10th round right when that 3rd day of the draft started, and they didn't. And so Jared started to think in his mind, okay, I'm coming back to school. And then boom, bada bang, out of nowhere, the Royals come in and give him the money that he wanted, even though he was 4 to 5 rounds later than we anticipated. Blade Tidwell was very close to coming back to school as well. I had somebody tell me that night of the draft that Blade's coming back to school, and then the Mets stepped in and gave him the money that he was looking for, which was close to first round money. So you just never know, and you're never really out of the water until the draft is totally over. Now, for these elite talents that we're talking about at the top end of the draft, you probably get to rounds 5 to 7, and you're in the clear, 100% in the clear for Appenzeller, Schoolcraft, Ford, Grindlinger, guys like that. But you're never really out of the water until you're truly out of the water, if that silly illustration makes sense. What are your thoughts on what would you like to see in the first round? Anything that sticks out off the top of your head with Liam Doyle, Gavin Keelan, Andrew Fisher, Marcus Phillips. It seems like those four have a real chance. Doyle, Keelan, and Fisher are going to be first-round picks. Keelan and Doyle, 100% certain. Fisher probably 80-90% chance of being a first-round pick, but he might slide into the compensatory picks, very much like Drew Gilbert. No, Gilbert wasn't a compensatory pick. Beck was. Beck
Burke.
was.
Burke.
Burke last year as well. Was there another one last year? Was Billy?
Billy was the second compensatory, I believe.
Yeah. So I think Fisher might slide into that. That's what, 30 to 40 range, 30 to 35.
Yeah.
I think Fisher and Phillips could go there. They could also sneak into the first round. So what are your thoughts on Liam at the top of the draft? And also any landing spots off the top of your head with Keelan, Fisher, Phillips that you would like to see for them?
No, it's not even worth just trying to predict because the baseball draft is so different in that. So compared to the NFL draft, it's like team need and they need to have an immediate impact, right? Baseball, a lot of times it's kind of, it has to do with the money. It has to do with a certain profile that they like they all draft a certain way. And it's kind of best available player a little bit more, but also factor in the money. So, we know Liam's going to go in those first handful of picks. The reality of going in those picks is that you're not going to go to a team that's competing for the World Series right now. That's how it's supposed to be. So he'll have an opportunity to move quick wherever he goes. I think, the interesting part about the Rockies at 4 is that they've drafted Tennessee guys. The past 2 drafts, they've drafted Dolander and Beck. But they have, Rockies great Matt Holliday's son, who might be there at 4. So they would probably take him.
And Halverson.
And they took Halverson. Yeah, but I was just talking about first rounders. They've been snagging Tennessee dudes. So looks like Cade Anderson is probably going to go first to the Nationals. But that's kind of a weird situation because they just fired their manager and GM, so they may pivot and go with somebody like Doyle for the higher velocity. Like you just don't know. So I don't really have a landing spot that I would love to see. Like, I mean, I root for the Braves, just because they're close, and I grew up watching Chipper, so I like the Braves. I'm not like a diehard. Don't really have an MLB team that I'm diehard for. So, I'll just, hopefully like Phillips and Fisher both go to the Red Sox, and then somehow Keelan ends up on the Braves. So that would be good. What would you like to see?
I'll tell you right now, I might jump out of my window of the top floor of my house if Gavin Keelan or Andrew Fisher get drafted by the Red Sox.
They just want to go play with Croce.
Fair enough. I hate so much that Garrett Crochet plays for the Red Sox because I love Garrett Crochet so much, and I hate the Boston Red Sox so much. But
it's a true predicament that you're in.
I truly a pickle.
Truly a pickle.
Truly a pickle. I don't know. My whole thought is like, I don't want to see Liam Doyle go to the Rockies. I feel for Chase Dolander that he's there as a pitcher. I think it's different for Beck. I think best case scenario, Liam goes to the Mariners at 3. That'd be a great landing spot for Liam. But we'll see.
That's possible too.
It is, but it seems like the Mariners like Seth Hernandez. Also, the problem for the Mariners is that the Angels are kind of viewed as the team that's going to take Liam. This is what Kylie
makes a lot of sense because they took Detmers from Louisville the year that Crochet went. And they took a Tennessee guy last year, and Christian Moore, obviously. So, and Zach Neto the year before that, who they probably saw. I'm sure he's a first rounder. They saw him a lot, but it's hard for me not to think, oh, he played in the regional, played well at Tennessee. That kind of solidified. I don't know. Maybe that was just a coincidental connection to Tennessee that Neto had. and ended up on the Mariners. But yeah, the Mariners like left-handed pitching for sure, or the Angels like left-handed pitching for sure.
And the Angels need pitching. So here's what Kylie McDaniel from ESPN says in his mock draft, his latest one that he put out this morning on Friday morning. He has Liam going second to the Angels. He says Doyle has been tied here for a while, and with good reason. He would probably take a below slot deal, and he is a strong candidate to be first player to the big leagues in this entire class. Given his dominating fastball, he could get big league hitters out right now, and the Angels may be aggressive and let him do just that, then see if they can make him a long-term starter. Cade Anderson seems like the top guy on the Angels board, though, and thus would probably be the pick here if he doesn't go number one. In this scenario, I think this decision will come down to Doyle, Jamie Arnold, or bigger cut versus slot, and Ike Irish. I give Doyle the slight edge. And the point that he is making about Ike Irish is that there's a thought that Ike Irish will sign for well below the slot value of what a team can sign a player to. And the reason a team would take somebody that would sign for less instead of maybe taking the better prospect is because, okay, if the Angels save money with their number 2 pick, which it sounds like they would do with Liam Doyle or Ike Irish, but especially Ike Irish, if they save money, because they all have a pool of money to sign. I don't know what the pool is, but they have a pool of money to sign their 20 draft picks. And if you save money with your first round pick, Doyle, Irish, that gives you more money to apply to other picks to make sure that you sign other picks. You can kind of extend your money in a sense. I hope that makes sense. So for Doyle's sake, I'd love to see him go to the Mariners. I mean, you could see him in the playoffs this year if that were to happen. I'd like to see him with the Cardinals. I think that'd be cool. It looks like he's going to go top 10. Do not want to see him with the Blue Jays. No. Please don't go to the Blue Jays.
New Hampshire kid, that would make sense.
It would. So we'll see. Liam's obviously going to be in a good spot regardless. But even if the Angels drafted him, I'm pulling up the standings right now. They're pretty far back in the division, but in the wild card, I thought they were somewhat in the race.
They're not horrible this year. No. Yeah, they're not horrible. They're just not average. Great. Yeah, they're average.
They're 4 out of the wild card spot. So there is a world. I think it's unlikely that the Angels make the playoffs, but if they did and they took Liam, well, we could see him pitching in the playoffs. Liam could very much follow the Crochet route here in a couple of years. So Liam will obviously be the first one off the board. You'll have Tennessee signees Billy Carlson and Steele Hall. Billy Carlson, the shortstop from California, he's expected to be a top 10 pick. Steele Hall, a shortstop from the Birmingham area who is signed to Tennessee, he will be a top 15, top 20 pick, or is expected to be. So Billy Carlson, Steele Hall, they're not making it to school. We'll see if Cruz Schoolcraft goes in the first round. Cameron Appenzeller, it doesn't seem like he's going to go in the first round, but does somebody give him the money that he wants in the second or third round? Ethan Moore is a top 100 prospect from Illinois. Tennessee flipped him from Louisville to Tennessee. He's a middle infielder as well. Seems like he's going to sign in the draft. It just seems like he's not asking for a lot. So I would be surprised if Ethan Moore makes it to campus. And then guys like Taylor Tracy, an outfielder, Ethan Bayado, a right-handed pitcher from Texas, Nathan Eisfelder, another outfielder, Tyler Wood, a right-handed pitcher, Evan Hankins, a first baseman. You kind of start getting down the list, and it would require guys signing just the sign or signing for less than they should. So outside of the big 4 names, Appenzeller, Hall, Schoolcraft, Carlson, Grindlinger, and Moore are the ones to keep an eye on most. And then with the transfers, we talked about Henry Ford. We did mention Clay Edmondson and Mason Estrada. I would still personally, I know I mentioned this earlier, Joe Doyle was more confident in them possibly making it to campus than I was. But I just, Mason Estrada, older guy, I could see him just signing because he is an older guy. And then Edmondson, Joe kind of said it differently, but I don't know. I just don't see 94 from that angle, his knuckles scraping the ground and that filth. I just don't see a team taking a chance on that and giving him enough money to sign. But boy, would throw Clay Edmondson into the bullpen, and that'll play.
It
Any
will.
thoughts on any of those guys that I just mentioned?
No, same boat as you. Kind of, we'll just have to see. They're in that harder to predict tier because there's not as much clarity when you get out of those first few rounds, like how much pool money is left. If they're after the 10 rounds, then it's not even, there's no slot. It's just, what are they willing to sign for? What are the calls like between the teams and the agents? If are they going to come up with a deal or not? How much do they really like them? You just don't know where they're at on each specific team's draft board. So we'll just have to see. And then, the other guy I wanted to point out was Grimmer, who Doyle talked about. Like, wouldn't be surprised to see somebody snag him, especially if they get him at a deal. Now, I think Grimmer, um, unless it was, unless it was just enough to pull him away, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to play at Tennessee for a year, have more at bats, have a SEC schedule where he shows, a more full season of what he can do. And raise his draft stock, but there's a lot of power in that left-handed bat. So, he's kind of a small risk that would maybe surprise some people. And then I just want to see what happens with Bargo, Chapman, and Peoples trio. That 8 to 10 round projection could go a lot of different ways. Like, you could see any of them early, like 5th round, if they're willing to take a deal, or maybe they slide and they go in like the 15th, but they get 10th round, 9th round money. Like, they're in that could go a lot of different directions category, and they could all come back to school or all sign. So we'll just have to see. Yeah, I don't really like the MLB draft. Just being quite frank, like, I think it's set up in a weird way where there's a lot of just it's different than any other draft because you can take high schoolers. So I get that, and they're not going straight to the big league team. So there's just a lot of different elements and nuances to the MLB draft, but I don't know, it just kind of seems like it could be more simple and better for both sides, like the teams and the players. But we'll just have to see. It's good overall, especially the guys that do go and like their lives are changing. So very happy for everybody. And it's exciting for the teams because they get new talent that could be the face of their franchise in a year or two now, or 5 years, depending on how young or how long it takes the guy to get there. But yeah, I'd say outside of the transfers that are draft eligible, being Ford and Edmondson and Grimmer is kind of the one I want to see what happens there. But I think as far as Peebles, Bargo, and Chapman, I think all three of them, after talking with Doyle, will probably sign, which is good for them. I think when you get to your junior year, your 3rd year, that's when you're supposed to go, and the coaching staff is actively pushing for them to get their opportunity because it's their last year of leverage. And the Tennessee coaching staff is so good about putting the kid first. And it's like, if you want to play pro ball, they're going to help you get there. And so that makes me feel good about it. There's other programs that if they want you back as a senior and they think there's a chance, they ain't going to help you get drafted as high as you can get drafted. So it's exciting for those players.
I don't like the draft either, but boy, is it going to be entertaining.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Nerve-wracking, but entertaining.
The thing I dislike most about it is just how late it is in the summer. It doesn't matter for Major League Baseball, but boy, does it screw college coaches.
Yeah, the timing's weird.
So
better than it used to be, though.
For sure. My last thought is going off of the Vols that are the guys that are Vols that are going to be drafted. Curious to see where Dean Curley, AJ Russell, Nate Snead, Brandon Arvidsson, that kind of mid-tier, probably rounds 2 to 5 watch for that group, just generally speaking. AJ Russell, 100% expect to sign. Dean Curley, same way. I think Nate Snead will as well, especially after his draft combine. He looked really good and turned heads, like Joe Doyle mentioned. But I mean, there's a world in which we live. I would not get my hopes up. I don't expect it at all. But like, I would not be totally surprised if AJ Russell doesn't go as early as he wants, if Brandon Arvidsson doesn't go as early as he wants, if Nate Snead doesn't go as early as he wants. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But I think there is a world in which that happens for those individual players, and maybe I could see a surprise coming from that group if they don't go as early as they want. The guys that you were talking about, Bargo, Franklin, I guess, could be the same way as well. That group of guys, Tanner Franklin, the group of guys I was just discussing. Bargo, Chapman, Peebles. I don't see Bargo or Chapman coming back. I think Peebles is the one that would be most likely of that group if any of that trio comes back. I'm also interested to see, does Hunter Hensley get drafted? Kind of the forgotten guy. I hope so too. That would be pretty cool. So we'll have all the coverage of it all that you need at GoVols247.com. The first 3 rounds Sunday night. Tony Vitello will be on your television, and then rounds 4 through 20 beginning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, I believe, on Monday. So I have a bit of a personal thing that I have to deal with first thing Monday morning. So just as a heads up, I don't know that I'm going to be able to provide the draft coverage that I would like on Monday. But we will certainly have updates on the site at GoVols247.com. And as the day moves along, the further we get into the day, the more available I will become. So unfortunately, I have something that I need to deal with on Monday, but we will still have plenty of coverage of the draft, and we'll have plenty of reaction on the site. And Will and I will hop on here probably next Tuesday or Wednesday and share our reactions and discuss the developments with everything that took place. So make sure you're locked in the GoVols 24/7 for all of your MLB draft coverage. Mr. Heflin, thank you for your time today, and I hope you have a great weekend.
You as well, brother. I'm sure I'll talk to you before then, but I want to publicly say best of luck in your little thing you got to take care of. Thoughts and prayers from everybody. But thank you for your time, brother. You'll be good, and it'll be a fun draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you saying that. For Will Heflin, I'm Ben McKee. This has been another edition of the Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com.